Smith & McGowan here in Helena, and I'm one of your MAC lobbyists. I will let Rebecca, the other lobbyist, introduce herself, but just want to thank you for making time on short notice with your really busy schedules to attend this webinar and talk about advocacy from the MAC perspective and what we can do to prepare. And the goal is really just to help create a comfort level for everyone to go out and be a confident advocate for the issues that you all care so much about. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Steph is going to monitor the chat box, and if you just have something and you raise your hand, we can stop at any point and answer questions. So Rebecca, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Myers, and I am also a contract lobbyist. I live in Helena, and I have my own firm, Northbound Public Affairs, and I'm doing some contract work with the Smith & McGowan team, which is awesome. So I don't know many of you. Some of you may have seen me on some of the recent calls, but I'll be assisting Nanette this year with MAC and some of your priorities, and just really excited that you all are taking the time to be here today. And I guess just the only addition I have is if anything comes up or you have questions that don't get addressed, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we're happy to get any more additional information or answer any questions if we need to afterwards. So thank you.
Great. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen and sharing a video. It's a couple years old now. It's from 2015. It's a senator out of Bozeman, Senator J.P. Pomnikowski. It's about a 6.5-minute video, and she just does a phenomenal job in a short amount of time going over the legislative process. But the reason I always share this video is because she's so relatable. So I'm just going to pull this up, and I hope everyone can see it and hear the video. Can you all see the video? Okay, I'm gonna hit play, and there will be a link to it. So if you can't, and it's an insufferable 6 minutes, I apologize, but you will have an opportunity later.
Let's talk about government. Montana has a citizen legislature. Regular citizens serve as your lawmakers. None of us are professional politicians. We are ranchers, nurses, teachers, lawyers, pipe fitters, ranchers, computer geeks, ranchers, really a lot of ranchers. Of the three branches of government, the legislature is the branch closest to the people. It's the branch of the people. The great thing about the legislature is that anyone, any of us can be a legislator. And the unfortunate thing about the legislature is that anyone can be a legislator. 100 in the House of Representatives, 50 in the state Senate meet in Helena every 2 years for a regular legislative session that lasts no more than 90 days, after which we come back to our regularly scheduled lives with additional responsibilities as elected officials. For January through the end of April, we leave our families, our careers, our friends and neighbors, our pets. That's my kitty cat Fitzy right there. We move to Helena and we meet 6 days a week and together decide what will become state law that applies to everyone in Montana. We take an oath of office and then get 3 committee assignments for committee meetings that go sometimes 8, 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes longer, in which we listen to individual citizens, lobbyists, staff, state agencies, everyone, considering ideas in the form of bills. We each become experts in the subjects and policy considered in our respective committees. The learning curve is steep. Some describe the process of learning about state laws and the legislative process, about state agencies and how rules are implemented, like trying to drink from a fire hose. And then we consider individual bills. A bill is an idea for a law. It's an idea. In Montana, each bill proposes one single issue. Last session, more than 2,471 bills were requested, 1,187 considered on issues like school funding, beer and wine licenses, farmers markets, everything. Some legislators bring their own ideology and ideas for laws, but many more bring your ideas. We hear everything from very weighty issues like nuclear power to far more lighthearted ideas like hunting with spears or naming a state dinosaur or a state soil. You might think making policy is dry and boring, but it isn't. It can be agonizing. The devil is in the details. We consider specific and difficult issues, how much mercury is allowed in your drinking water, whether 10-year-olds can hunt without taking a hunter safety course, whether buffalo should be shot if they leave Yellowstone. But our only constitutional duty in that regular session is to pass a balanced budget for the state for the next 2 years. State government lives within its means, just like your household does. We passed a $10 billion budget for 2016-17. This 4-inch binder is one bill, House Bill 2, the state budget. Only during session, remember that's for no more than 90 days every 2 years, each Montana legislator receives a fabulous salary of $82.64 a day. Don't spend it all in one place. And per diem, $112, which pays for that rental place in Helena. We don't do it for the money. And we cannot be career politicians, and not just because of, at most, $7,400 salary every 2 years. We have term limits, no more than 8 years in the House or Senate in a 16-year period. The House averages 30 new people every session, a 30% turnover. You should participate in your citizen legislature. You may not think of yourself as political. I never thought I'd be in politics either. But each of us has life experience, professional expertise, enthusiasm for an issue. Remember that legislators are not experts on all subjects. We need to hear from you. You care about your kids' school and teachers. Maybe you care about hunting and fishing in your favorite spots, or about a loved one fighting cancer who wants to participate in a drug trial, or about dog breeds. Policy about all of this is made at the state level. You should participate because your state representative may have the exact opposite political beliefs as you do. Do you trust that person to vote your interests? Can you have a conversation with your representative or senator? You can encourage us to vote on an issue and not hold fast to philosophical or political differences. If you doubt your power as an individual, don't. In some hearings, hundreds of people come to testify or to fill the Capitol to show support for an issue or to oppose an issue. You can find your own legislator in the hallways and tell him or her your position. Nicely, please. If you don't speak up, silence implies consent. And if not the state legislature, participate or serve yourself more locally. Our Bozeman School Board, the city or county commission, service or fraternal organizations, work or school groups, you can work on policy and not necessarily be in politics. I personally kind of progressed to the legislature. First, I became part of my neighborhood association, then served on the Bozeman Planning Board and the Zoning Commission. I went to the legislature to testify on a bill. I made a suggestion that ended up in the bill and realized that I'd just written state law and that even I could be a legislator. I love the work of the legislature. I love the policy, not the politics. After the regular session, helping constituents, you, and working on policy has become my full-time volunteer job. I get calls all the time on everything from water rights, voter registration, healthcare, that I should change my hairstyle. I hope I've given you a face to put to the name of the state legislature, and please know that most of us, are feeling, thinking, caring human beings, just trying to do what's right for a state full of ranchers, lawyers, accountants, everyone. Thank you.
So I think that just, we could probably stop there and say, you've seen that and that's a good overview, but it gives you a really good idea, and we're going to go into more depth in our presentation, that legislators are people just like you and me. Legislators care desperately about what they're doing and why they're in the legislative body. And you already know how to be an advocate. You already know how to work with legislators because you do it on a daily basis. You talk to people every day. Whatever part of the child care and education space you're in, you talk to people every day. You talk to parents, you talk to colleagues, you talk to other providers, you talk to state agencies, and you talk to them in a respectful manner. You share your passion. You share what you know to be barriers or challenges and the potential solutions that you've come up with. And you are an expert in your subject matter. So you are the people who can bring to the legislators information about the childhood care and education space. That's your role. So you are already doing it. You're already adept, and we're just going to help through this webinar create more of a comfort level, hopefully, and really outline the strategies to connect directly with legislators. Hopefully everyone can see these slides, and we don't want you to feel like you can't ask questions. So if you have questions, pipe up. And we're not going to read the bullet points on every single slide because you all can read and it will be a resource for you after the fact. But we just wanted to provide as much information as we can on the slides and then hit the high points. So policymakers are just like you and me, and you already have the skill set to connect with them. Rebecca, do you want to talk about the legislative process?
Sure. Yeah. So sort of picking up where Senator Pomnikowski left off, for those of you who haven't participated, and I don't know what percentage of MAC members and you all here today have actually testified or done a call to action or just done some grassroots outreach. But for those of you less familiar, the legislative session in Montana doesn't happen every year. It's in every other year. It takes place in the odd year. So we're coming up to the 2021 legislative session. It will start in January and typically end somewhere around 90 days later. This past session, I think they ended maybe a week early. Of course, with the ongoing public health crisis and COVID, the 2021 session may look slightly different, but we'll just have to address that as we move forward and see how things go. There's 100 members in the House of Representatives. They are elected every 2 years, so they're constantly running for re-election given how Montana's legislative cycle works. And I think what's important to recognize is that there's roughly a third of our legislators that will turn over, meaning that there's either folks that move or decide not to run. And so we're going to see just an enormous amount of new legislators, brand new, who may not have a lot of experience or history working with policy or politics. And that it can be somewhere between like 30 to 40%. In the Senate, they run every 4 years, and they stagger the re-elections. So there's always 25 senators who are running for election and 25 who are not. And those 25 who are not here in Montana are referred to as holdover senators. They're really good to know who they are. We'll get into that a little bit later because they are at least coming back for the next consecutive legislative session. They're really important to build some of those relationships with. And they have some institutional knowledge moving forward, which can be really helpful when you're talking about policy priorities. And then the other piece that I thought was important to note, as JP Pomnikowski points out, there are term limits in Montana. However, it's slightly loosely defined, I would say, at best. So there is, in theory and in practice, some level of term limit, which means you can serve a certain amount of time and then you have to leave. However, in Montana, that's different from other states. A lot of times they'll run in the House, serve their 8 years, jump over to the Senate, serve 2 terms in the Senate, and then maybe take a slight break and then they'll come back in. So you still see a lot of old timers, I suppose, and you can see a lot of I think institutional knowledge with some of that. It can work both for you and against you, depending on who they are and how they view issues that you all care about. But I think what's important to know is it's never worth writing somebody off, because whoever we have in the legislature is probably going to be around for some time. And even if they're not serving as a state legislator, often you'll find them in some other office that has influence and power within their community. I'll turn it back to you, Nanette.
Great. So how a bill becomes a law. You all remember this from your American government classes, probably. I'm not going to go through in depth all of the steps of how a bill becomes a law, but I do want to just remind you that it is a long process, and you really have to shepherd a bill through a process. And even if it is something that you would think to yourself on a emotional or intellectual level, this is an easy bill, there's really no such thing. And just because of how long the process is, the bill is introduced, and then we have a committee hearing in the first chamber. If it comes out of committee, we have a second vote on the floor of either the House or Senate, and then there's a third vote. And if it passes those two milestones, it gets transferred to the next chamber. There's another committee hearing. There's votes, second and third reading votes in the other chamber. If those two houses or two chambers don't come to consent and there's amendments in the second chamber, then the committee or the bill can go to a conference committee, and then it goes on to the governor. So it's worth noting that this lengthy process of how a bill becomes law takes a lot of work. And I bring it up because there are going to be times when we're ready for our MAC advocates to take action. And you may hear from us on the same issue or the same bill or the same amendment over and over again, saying it's time to take action. And as people are really busy, you may think to yourself, well, I've already done that. I got this email last week. I took action. I did what I was supposed to do. And my plate is full. I don't have time to do it again, or I've already done it. But there are points along the whole spectrum of moving a bill through the process where we need that grassroots action. And so we'll get into that a little bit more. But what I will tell you is we try to be very succinct in saying, here's the point where we're at, and here is the action we need you to take. If it's in a committee or if it's with your individual legislator in the Senate or the House, we try to very explicitly tell you what point of action we're at and what we need you to do or request for you to do. But it is a long process. In Montana, there are some roadblocks to bills moving through that lengthy process. In other states, there is instances where the committee chairman has far more power than in Montana, and the committee chairperson can simply prevent a bill from having a hearing. In Montana, if a bill is introduced and assigned to a committee, the committee chairman can have some authority over when that bill is scheduled for a hearing, but the committee chairperson cannot simply prevent a bill from having a hearing. So bills are introduced, we're certain we have the opportunity to either weigh in as a proponent or an opponent. The main roadblocks are, there are committees which are considered kill committees. Sometimes we have a concept that you would think, well, this should very clearly go to a Health and Human Services committee, but the bill ends up in a judiciary committee. So there are committees where leadership knows they can assert some influence and the bill will have a hearing, but it's not coming out of the bill. They'll just table the bill with no discussion. And then sometimes bills, while they will be brought forward for hearing, there's a predetermined outcome, and despite really compelling information or testimony from advocates, there is that predetermined outcome, and the legislation does or does not move forward. The other thing to note in Montana is I always tell people that it's really hard to kill a bill in Montana. So even if you think to yourself, that was a bad bill, we have it tabled in the committee, I continue and Rebecca continues to monitor those bills because there are any number of mechanisms to revive legislation. And so you kind of, until the legislative body adjourns, have to be fairly vigilant and continue to monitor what is happening with all the bills that you're interested in.
And so this brings us a little bit to the point of what is the role of a lobbyist? Who are we? Why does MAC allocate resources to a lobbyist? And so, you know, lobbying, and the term lobby or lobbying actually means like any form of communication that you're having with an official of the executive or a legislative branch of state government anywhere in the country, specifically for the purpose of influencing a vote or requesting somebody take action on something. And so, you know, the role of a lobbyist is many things. I think what's important here is simply that, you know, our job as your lobbyists is to serve as a liaison between the legislative body, the governor's office, state agencies, other elected officials, and you all as advocates for MAC. And we do that through various means. You know, some of that is in listening to everything Nanette has just described. It's a lot, and it may feel overwhelming. It might feel outside of your comfort level or your scope. But what we're here for is to really help with that strategic thinking. We're here to help craft messages depending on who you're talking to, much the same as you'd talk with family members or friends about different aspects of your life. You might tailor what that message looks like or sounds like so that it has more meaning and more influence depending on who it is that you're speaking to. And so part of why it's so important for you all as MAC members to know who your lobbyists are is so that when you do have questions and you don't really know how to answer or what the answer is, we are your resource for you to come to and say, you know, I got a call from so-and-so, they were asking about this, I'm not sure what to do. You know, it also serves as an opportunity for Nanette and myself to come to you all as the experts who know what you're doing on a day-to-day basis better than anybody else. We can come to you and say, does anybody have any information on X? This is something that's come up in this community. We'd really like to provide, you know, some additional resources or information. So Nanette and I are constantly working to craft some messages. We're helping to provide you all with a voice at the Capitol and outside, even throughout the interim. There are interim committees that meet. There's so many different opportunities where coalitions and stakeholder groups are coming together. And if you don't have a voice at that table, then big decisions around policies and funding are made without you ever having the opportunity to weigh in. And so we are constantly monitoring that, whether it's throughout the legislative session or in the several months in between. And I think, you know, one of the biggest takeaways I always like to share is that words really matter in this line of work. You know, when you're looking at statutes and laws that are just pages and pages of complicated legalese that's hard for someone to understand, it's important to have a group of people and experts that can look through that and sort of pick up on buzzwords or pick up on something that is concerning. And if somebody is not there doing that and paying close attention, decisions are made based on opinions of these legislators that, as you heard, you know, they're citizens. They're not necessarily trained in reading state laws. And so it's our job to stay on top of that to the best of our ability. And part of that means that we as advocates and lobbyists have nothing other than our level of integrity. And so we rely on you all to ensure that we're sharing your voice and relaying information that is both accurate, up to date, and effective. And that's where I think all of you come in, and that's what we're hoping to really help steer this conversation in that direction. It's important for you all to feel like you know where to come when you have questions. And it's important that Nanette and I know who all of you are so that we can go to you and say, we need your help. We need your expertise. We don't want to share any information that doesn't come across as candid, transparent, and we always want to follow up with them if they have questions.
Great. And I'll just add that from us, as far as resources, we try to probably, sometimes it may feel like over communication, but we do put out a client guide at the beginning of the session that really gives you a broad scope of information that you'll need throughout. And when we put out a call to action, we try to be as clear and concise as possible about what we need from you. If we ask you to contact a legislator, we'll tell you who to contact, when to contact, and what the talking points are, and how you can, how we can help facilitate that. If we ask you to come testify, we really try to walk our clients through from the simple logistics about how to use the shuttle or where to park, how to sign in, how to address the committee. We try to make sure that we create that comfort level. And then lastly, the philosophy that we have in both of our firms is really one of transparency. And so I would say I'm not really a wine and dine lobbyist. You know, we're more of the in the hall. We're very transparent. We try to build coalition and consensus and move your issues forward with as much integrity as possible to protect your reputation as well as ours.
Yeah, and you know, it's hard right now with COVID and social distancing. You know, typically it's really great to do things like this in person and be able to have a little bit more Q&A, and not just with us, but also as we think about what our outreach strategy is going to look like between now and the start of session. So I'll just throw that out, that we're kind of thinking outside the box here in terms of how we're going to be engaging and serving as your voice over the next few months. And I always love hearing from you as experts and members of an advocacy organization and a coalition, because I do think it matters. So please always feel free to share with us if you have ideas about how to connect in ways that maybe just aren't as obvious to us in our line of work. And with that, I just wanted to very briefly cover the fact that there are different types of legislation and different types of bills that we'll see coming forward. So there's policy legislation that really focuses on the policy. And that is something that I think a lot of people think about when they are contemplating changes, or when you run into barriers in providing services. Every time you have timelines or requirements for documentation or reporting procedures, a lot of that is based on policies. Then we also have this whole other section of legislation that comes forward that's really strictly tied to the budget. And there are specific committees that are designated within the Montana State Legislature that do nothing other than talk all day, every day for several months on end about the state budget. And they break that down into some subcommittees. So there's 6 different budget subcommittees. All of this falls under House Bill 2, which is the statutory appropriations. That's that big binder that you saw JP Pomnikowski pull up on the video that you saw at the very beginning of this presentation. And that is a fluid document that's constantly changing. And it also requires diligent monitoring, because there's a lot of ways in which legislators and others can influence how the budget impacts every other decision that's made throughout a legislative session. And you may think that the budget is perhaps less interesting or less important, but I think I would argue that based on the work you all do and the priorities that MAC is identifying and planning to work on and flush out over the next several weeks and months, is really, really critical to how the budget and that conversation takes place. We have something called unfunded mandates. That's when you might pass a bill that requires money in order for that new policy to be implemented. But if you have siloed conversations where you have one group of people in one committee talking about a policy, let's say early childcare or quality compensation, if you're only talking about that and you're not looping in all the legislators who also play a role with how the state budget works, you may pass a policy, but without any money to actually make it happen. We call that an unfunded mandate. That's something that generally lobbyists would not advocate for. It's not something I would ever advocate for. And it's something that legislators, I think, tend to be fairly sensitive around. So it's important for us as an organization and as your lobbyists to be ensuring that when we're talking about your policy priorities, we're not just talking with legislators who might be your allies on childcare issues, but we also want to be having that conversation with people who are in charge of how the budget works. It's important in so many different capacities, particularly now as the economy is struggling, and we're going to just see a lot of changes. So Nanette and myself will constantly be monitoring a lot of these subcommittees. There are some that are more critical to the work that you do than others. And there might be opportunities throughout this process where we can actually stand up and provide testimony or public comment. And sometimes that messaging can look significantly different when you're talking about the stream of money versus the actual policy. But we do our best to jointly have those conversations so that we don't have anyone making decisions without having the full spectrum of what it is that you need in order to provide services that are of the highest quality.
So whether you are being an advocate on behalf of the budget or whether we're advocating on behalf of a policy change, as I said before, there are so many opportunities for action throughout the entire process. And we will let you know, and we will tap you at every step of the way when we need your assistance to chime in and be an advocate for the issues. So just be aware that you may feel like you've completed the ask that we've floated out to you, but if we're asking again, there's a reason, and it's because we've moved one step closer to the end goal within the process.
So kind of coming full circle, you know, what we're hoping now, I think, to spend the rest of our time talking about is just how do you even begin to build a relationship with somebody that you may or may not have interacted with? There's a lot of information. It tends to be almost like a foreign language when you're first learning how the legislative process works, how bills are drafted, how they're introduced, and all the logistics that go into that, some of which we've already covered. But what we're hoping to talk today with you all about is just how can you all as MAC advocates and experts in your field actually start the process now over the course of the next several weeks and months to build a relationship with your local elected officials so that once the legislative session starts, they hopefully would have some sort of understanding of the services being provided by you all in their communities, and perhaps your name, even your face. I think, again, with COVID, some of this is more challenging right now than in other times, but there's so many different things that you can do. And I think what's just really important to remember is that, first of all, your voice actually matters. I would argue in almost every scenario, if you ask a legislator whether they would rather hear from a local constituent of theirs or a lobbyist, almost every single time they're going to say, I want to hear from my local constituent. That's you all. That's you as the experts. And it matters. It may matter more than you think that it does. I think politics can become tenuous and polarizing, but they are there to listen. And in most cases, even if they don't necessarily agree, they're going to be more than happy to sit down and talk to you. And sometimes I would argue when you don't agree, having that conversation and hearing their perspective can actually point you in a totally different direction than you otherwise would have gone had you not heard what their thoughts and opinions were. It can really help to strengthen understanding of each other, and if nothing else, build a lot of respect and trust between each other. So to do this, there's many different ways. After this webinar, Stephanie and Nanette and myself are going to be sending you a welcome letter that we have crafted. That is a letter introducing MAC to legislators. And what we'll be asking from you all is to take that letter, and you can use it in several different ways. One is you could directly insert it into an email as an initial outreach plan. It's a great way to introduce who you are and what MAC is and what you do. You can take the letter and kind of tweak it and make it personal if you want, and have some bullet points that sort of highlight the overall purpose of your role in the community and the services you're providing. The other thing that we are crafting, that we're almost done finalizing, is a fact sheet that we're going to send out to everybody that will highlight the 3 priorities that MAC has identified, along with some messaging and talking points. And that can also serve as a tool for you all to use when you're making some of that initial outreach. During the interim right now, when the legislators are not in session, it's a really great time to connect with them when things are less busy, less chaotic. And I would say between now and over the next 4 to 6 weeks, it's almost like a sweet spot of making that initial phone call, of sending an email, and trying to do some follow-up. Some of you may be more comfortable right now actually offering to sit down and have coffee. Some legislators are more comfortable with that right now, but they are all very much used to some sort of Zoom or conference call. Most of them would be more than happy to just hop on a phone call and hear from you. You are their constituent. You're a voter in their community, and that matters to them. And so the more that we can do now to introduce yourself, tell them who you are, what you're doing in the community, and talk a little bit about some of the priorities that we're going to start to bring to the table so that they have some idea and understanding. All that does is give them and you time to kind of flush out some of their concerns, to answer any questions they may have. And then when Nanette and I do put out that email during the session, or make a phone call saying, we need you to come testify, who's available, the goal would be that you're a name, face, and voice that they are going to start to recognize and trust. So when you go before them, it's more meaningful than someone they've never met before. I think it is important to remember, again, I think we've said many times, they're just like you and me, and you're the experts. And so they are going to automatically trust what you're saying. They're going to be interested in the information you have. And right now, MAC actually has some really great information to share with them that's beneficial to them, which makes sometimes that first initial outreach a little bit easier than if you're just calling without any real agenda or item that you want to talk about. Do you want to add anything, Nanette?
I just want to reinforce what you said, that building the relationship now and offering yourself up as a resource pays out dividends during the session. Because if Cheryl has built a relationship with someone, a legislator in her community, and then a piece of legislation comes across her desk that the legislator thinks, I don't understand this, but I know it would impact child care, and I don't know how to vote on this, but I know I can contact Cheryl because she's had the conversation with me, and she can get me the information, or she can provide me a good perspective on this piece of legislation. So that time we spend now building the relationship helps more than I can state into the session, with you all being able to be a direct conduit to legislators for good quality information. And as far as all of these communicating with legislators slides, you can go back and read them. There's a bunch of bullets, there's do's and don'ts, but really what we want to impart is that building the relationship is critical. Be sure to identify yourself and know what your restrictions are as far as the entity for which you work, and know who you're representing. Are you representing the child care you work for? Are you representing MAC? Are you representing yourself as a citizen? So just be sure that you clearly identify that to the legislator that you are speaking to. And then two pieces of information that I think are really important is when you have those conversations with legislators, if you can close the loop with Rebecca and I and let us know that we talked to X legislator, it was, let us know what the general tone of the conversation was, and let us know if there's any follow-up that needs to be done, or if they gave you a good nugget of information that we can carry forward. And then lastly, once you've had those conversations, it leaves the door open for you to follow up with a brief thank you, saying, thank you for your time. I look forward to continue working with you. But following up, thanking them is one more point of contact and one more building block of that relationship. So those are important things to keep in mind. And if you're going to contact a legislator, but you feel nervous, or you're not sure how to approach it, or you want some backup, or you want maybe some intel, Rebecca and I are here as a resource. We can help walk you through that. If you say, I have to contact Representative Jones, but I'm not really sure, I've never met him, we're on different sides of the political spectrum, give us a call, and we can, if we know anything about Representative Jones, we can share that information, like his wife runs a child care or whatever we happen to know. And if we don't know anything because they're a brand new candidate, then we can certainly just help facilitate the conversation so you feel comfortable. But I think we won't go through all of these slides bullet by bullet, just because you can certainly do that after the fact, and you're all good readers. So this, oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was just going to add one piece, which is, you're all smart and adaptive and intuitive people, and you're working with kids and you have professional responsibilities. That's really all you need. If you just look at a meeting like that as a professional opportunity to really introduce yourself and the things that you really know inside and out and that you care about. I think if you can just remember, they're just like us, and they probably know less than you. That's not always true, but for policy issues and specific targeted associations and your mission and vision, it probably is true. And I think that's just really important to just continue to tell yourself, because it can be daunting to feel like you're talking to someone who has that level of leadership and power in a community.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just hit on one more time. Now is the time. Rebecca said it perfectly. The next 4 to 6 weeks is kind of a sweet spot insofar as starting to build that relationship. And we will be following up from this webinar with all of the documents Rebecca referenced and kind of an initial call to action. Testifying in front of a committee, this is premature because we're not going to be doing that in the immediate future, but wanted you to have the information. And probably the critical thing to remember as far as testifying is, if we ask you to testify, we will really help walk you through the do's and don'ts and the procedure and the protocols, so you feel comfortable being in front of the committee. And if you've started to build the relationship, then it makes it that much easier. So then on to the MAC 2021 priorities. MAC has identified 3 areas that they would like to see move forward. One is comprehensive mixed delivery pre-K, and there's draft bill language right now that will go before the Education Interim Committee a week from today. They're starting to review that. MAC is also in the process of reviewing and evaluating what the committee is putting forward, and we'll have the opportunity to let the interim committee know where that bill meets our standard and our vision for comprehensive mixed delivery pre-K, and where that bill falls short and will not be a good solution for Montana families, Montana children, Montana providers. The second issue is an issue regarding insurance, rental insurance, and HOA regulations for childcare facilities. And we're gathering more information on that. We have draft our template legislation from other states that have corrected this issue. So that's something that will really impact childcare's operating out of a rental or operating in the HOA realm. And then lastly, quality compensation for childcare providers. And this is a really big ask. In past years, we've focused on kind of the concept of a provider rate increase, but really a 1.2 or a 1.7 provider rate increase does not get childcare providers where they need to be as far as quality compensation. And so this is a really big lift because it will take significant resources, financial commitment, and a large appropriation from the state. And as Rebecca said, it's going to be a very fiscally conservative year based on the revenue and budget projections. So part of that conversation is continuing to remind legislators that quality compensation is critical for quality child care and education. And right now we have an opportunity, even though this will be a very heavy lift, we have an opportunity with COVID, because I think a lot of people who previously did not understand the essential nature of childcare for the workforce in Montana and the economic viability in Montana now really understand that we have to have childcare, quality childcare, and affordable childcare for families. And part of that is equitably and appropriately compensating providers. So those are the three priorities that we'll ask you to talk about with your legislators. And then as you hear feedback and they give you feedback saying, well, here's my opinion on pre-K, or here's where I'm coming from with regard to rental insurance. That's information, again, that we'll ask you to close the loop and report back to us so we can then adjust our strategy if need be, or know what is potentially coming at us as far as support or opposition for our priorities. Rebecca, do you want to talk about, I mean, we kind of gone over this, the grassroots outreach that we're going to be asking you to do in the next couple months, the remaining months of the interim and then into the session. But do you want to add anything, Rebecca?
Well, I would just add, I think this is where you all come in. So as you're learning and hearing, there's just several pieces to this larger puzzle in terms of pushing forward or protecting your priorities and resources. So Nanette and myself and several others involved with MAC are going to continue to flesh out some of these details as it relates to the talking points and the messaging. We're going to work on crafting what that message can or should look like. We will provide opportunities for each of you to add any personal information, data, statistics that are really relevant to your local community. And we're going to make sure we get all of that to you. And then what the actual ask here is today is that, you know, between now and the next few months, what we're asking for is that you all consider making some of that initial contact and doing some legislative outreach with your local elected officials. And I think Nanette's going to talk here in just a minute about who they are and how you can figure out who your legislators are. As Nanette shared, we're more than happy to get you some background information as you figure that out. And we can talk with you a little bit about the best ways to communicate with them. You know, email can work really well. A phone call always works really well. But I think what we need is to see some of you all as advocates starting to do some of that initial outreach. And, you know, if one of the policy priorities feels outside your scope and is a little uncomfortable, or you just don't feel like you have the talking points, then that's when you can come to us as a resource. We can get more information or less. If there's one issue in particular that you are really passionate about and would like to be talking to these folks about, then go for it. And I think you have to kind of trust where your level of comfort is, knowing that you can always build off of that first initial conversation that you have with them. And then Nanette and I will continue to kind of talk through how we want to compile some of the feedback or information that you all are learning. It can be a huge asset for us as your lobbyists and to you as an organization to really understand where some of the concerns are and whether they seem centered around a particular part of the state, whether it's related to their political party, whether there's fundamental differences in ideology or not. But it also helps us identify unexpected allies. It may help us identify a potential bill sponsor, someone that we may not have thought of. It's just great opportunities for us to really learn something from you all as the experts in your community starting to talk about this. I think that's the only other point I wanted to make.
Yeah, that's perfect. So contacting your legislators, it's incredibly easy. We will actually be sending you a spreadsheet that shows who all the candidates, legislators are, whether they're an incumbent, whether they're a holdover senator. So you will be getting that. And then right now, all House members are running and half the Senate are running to be reelected. And when people are candidates, they're really eager to talk to constituents. So if we can capture them in this sweet spot where they're running, they're knocking on doors, maybe not as much this year due to COVID, but their ears are open for constituent conversations, we would encourage that we take advantage of that. We're going to give you a list of key legislators that's identified in the spreadsheet, but Rebecca kind of talked about who are our key legislators, and we've outlined for purposes of policy issues, which committees we focus on. The vast majority of our policy issues go to certain committees: Health and Human Services, Business and Labor, Senate Welfare and Public Health, Welfare and Safety. And then from the appropriations side and the Senate finance side, who those critical legislators are. And this is really more kind of for the session, but just so you're aware, that's who we focus on. So we have identified the key legislators, some of them, and you will be receiving this, but you know, Senator Steve Fitzpatrick, he's an incumbent, he's out of Great Falls, and he has been traditionally on the Senate Business and Labor, and he is likely going to end up there again. So if we're talking about something like a policy change to insurance, that's where that policy bill is going to land. So if we've already built a relationship with Senator Fitzpatrick, the conversation is going to be much easier. Like I said, we've just kind of tried to give you enough information so you know whether they're a brand new legislator or if they're an incumbent, if they're switching from one house to the other. You will receive this, so I'm just going to go through it quickly. These are our holdover senators. Yes, Steph.
We had a question in the chat from Mary, and she was wondering, is it wise to encourage parents we work with to contact legislators as well?
I was just texting a response. Nanette, if you want to answer, otherwise I can finish. I was just going to say that I think parents carry a lot of weight. They can be enormous advocates. So many legislators seem to really like what they have to say. The key piece I would mention is that we want to make sure that all of our messaging is consistent. And so it's hard to control sort of where other people go with information, of course, but to whatever the extent we can ensure that those parents and others understand what MAC priorities are and some of the messaging and talking points. You know, what we'll be working on is what are we going to stay away from? Like, what buzzwords do we just want to stay away from? We don't want to get anyone riled up. Really, right now, the time is to just put something on their radar, give them some time to digest the information. And as long as we're all sharing the same message, I think it's perfectly fine. Nanette, do you have any other?
Absolutely. And Mary, it's such a great question because we know that the MAC members that we have, they can't do everything. They can't be the touch point for 150 legislators and 270 candidates. So if we can take this information and share it out through our network of MAC and the early childhood coalitions and the parents with whom you have contact, and help them feel comfortable, you can share this recording. If we want to do another advocacy session just for parents, we can certainly do that. But in order to have the reach we need across this expansive state, we absolutely, we want to provide every potential advocate with the information they need to go forward and contact candidates and legislators and have their voice heard.
Yeah, and you know, the more voices that come to the table sharing the same message, the more powerful the impact will be. And it looks like, so Rachel, you mentioned putting together a script or talking points to give. We absolutely will. That's part of what we'll be sharing with all of you here in the next few days. And, you know, provide feedback to us as well. If you don't feel like there's enough, then let us know and we can just continue to add. And that's, again, where all of you come in. You all are the experts. So if there's information you think is critical that's missing on any of these fact sheets or talking points, we can certainly add them in. And I think it's helpful for us to know that, so that when Nanette and I go out and have our own conversations with legislators and interim committee members and others, we want to make sure that we're sharing the most key points that are necessary to getting our point across. Absolutely.
So these next couple slides kind of go to people feeling uncomfortable and then engaging parents to some degree. I like to share this because a lot of times people feel like if I can't contribute, then I don't have a voice. And I would say that's just patently not correct. In Montana, we have the lowest individual campaign contribution limits for representatives and senators in the nation. So while a lot of people say, you know, if you're not contributing, then you're not going to get the ear of any legislator. And with our low limits, money is somewhat important, but our relationships with legislators trump money and contributions every day of the week. So if you have parents who say, gosh, I'm uncomfortable and I can't make a contribution, that's okay. Your contribution is as a citizen who has information to provide to these legislators, and you don't need to make a financial contribution. Your advocacy and your relationship with that legislator is going to help us far more than any monetary contribution. So don't let people shy away from engaging because they feel worried about the issue of a monetary contribution. And then this last slide, we're going to see a lot of changes to how the legislative body functions in 2021. Some conversations were started before COVID-19 as far as going to annual sessions or finding a way to better educate that 30% of brand new legislators. But a lot of changes are going to come as a result of COVID-19. Are we going to be doing a remote session? Are we going to have a gap in time where they're on break in order to let the flu season kind of dissipate and then reconvene? We don't know the answers to that, but Rebecca and I listen to all the committees and listen to the discussions, and we'll be paying attention. And if we do go to remote session, I actually am starting to think of it as a great opportunity for better engagement from our grassroots community, because you won't then have to take an entire day off of work and travel through awful roads and sit in the Capitol for 4 hours waiting for your turn to provide testimony. I think we're gonna see, if they do move to remote and allow a Zoom environment, much better engagement from parents and providers and advocates who can simply tune in and share their voice via Zoom. So while some people are really upset that we may be changing how we've always done things, I'm trying to look at it as an opportunity. And regardless of what the changes are, we will let you know. So lastly, we want you to participate. We want you to feel comfortable participating, and we want to help you prepare so you are confident in every conversation you have. One thing we maybe didn't go over that I'll say real quick is you are the expert, but you don't have to be the expert about everything. If a legislator asks you a question about statewide data or a question that you just simply don't know the answer to, it is okay, instead of shooting from the hip, to say, I don't know the answer to that, but I know where I can find the answer, and I can go back to my coalition and we can research that and get you statewide data. And I can tell you personally what's happening in my community or in my child care as far as those numbers. So you are the expert, but you don't have to be the expert on every single question. So it's 1 o'clock. We didn't leave much time for questions. If we want to take a couple minutes to try and answer any questions, if there are remaining questions, happy to do that. And I just want to thank you, because by participating in this webinar, you're already taking a step and becoming an advocate and doing more than a lot of other citizens.
Stephanie, what's your plan with the recording? Nanette and I will get some information out ASAP related to these talking points. And so how do you want to proceed with the recording and ensure that everybody has access to it?
Yep, I think what we'll do is I'll download that recording. It may take up to 24 hours in the way that it processes, and then I'll upload it to HMHB's YouTube channel, which makes it super easy to access. In the follow-up email, we will include that outreach letter that Nanette and Rebecca talked about, as well as the PowerPoint presentation that you saw today, a PDF of that, and then also that the link to this actual webinar. If you found this interesting, I would suggest that, and you have a group of other folks that would be interested in this, do this as a lunch and learn. This is a great virtual activity, and we recorded it in order to keep this going. And that being said, I think Rebecca and Nanette, and then also myself, we are so happy to answer questions and get those, just get those finer points to you, and so that everybody feels comfortable engaging in this. And thank you all so much for spending your lunch hour with us today. And we look forward to whatever kind of legislative session we have coming up. Thanks all for your time, and have a really great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.